Alright, so back with the Xenon micro pinball build, almost done. As you can see, I've got the head kind of just dummy fitted on there. I've got wiring going up through there that we're going to use for the lighting. The panels are fitted. I went ahead and applied the stickers, printed them out and applied them. Made a little control panel out of MDF. When you print the stickers out, there's a little box around the sticker, so if you cut the box out, you can use that as a template to cut MDF out, and then cut out to the edge of your sticker. That's all been painted silver. Happy with the way the lockdown bar came out. I've got a whole other video on printing your own stickers and laminating your own stickers. So I'll post a link to that here instead of going into that in any of this video. I'm going to try to keep it fairly short. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a set of side rails for this. The side rail right now is kind of just represented by print on the sticker, but what I'm going to do is create some side rails out of some of this metal ducting tape. It's like a really reflective chrome. And what I used on my other build was just some plastic packaging. This is probably like a 0.3 or 0.5 mil. It's a pretty thick, pretty sturdy plastic packaging, and this is just from a little Chinese Game Boy clone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure and cut the corners of this material, which is already a perfect corner, and that's going to become material for the side rails. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to laminate it in this stuff, stick this aluminum tape over the top of it and wrap it around, and do that as smoothly as I can, and we'll cut those out and use them for side rail pieces with some really thin double stick tape. And I'll be right back when I have those cut out and ready to apply. Okay, so now I've taken this plastic packaging and I literally cut one side of the corners out already. You wouldn't have to use plastic packaging actually if you were going to laminate it with this metal tape, which has some thickness to it already because it is actual aluminum tape used in ducting applications. I'm not talking about duct tape. This is actual like metal tape you can get at hardware stores. And when it's laminated cleanly to the plastic, though, it's you know, creates a really nice simulated rail. So I'm going to go ahead and install, and now you can see I kind of wrapped it around the edges a little bit on the inside so it wouldn't ever peel off on the outside. You know, it'll be on there permanent. And what I'm going to use is this excellent little stuff, Scotch, another 3M product, the double stick tape. It's really thin stuff though. It's like regular Scotch tape, only it has a really hardy stick on each side of it. And what I'm going to do is apply it just along the rail here, along the edge. I've already cleaned it up real nice. And then we'll just stick our thing on there. I'm going to trim it with the X-Acto. I'm going to do that really quickly. We'll see how that looks. I can show this is all getting on video here. Okay. So I'm literally just going to take a length of this stuff, carefully peel it off, and just go over it, over the length that I really need, and then stick it on there. Kind of just lightly tapping it down a minimum. You want it to stick, but you don't want to get your fingerprints all over it, or else it'll lose adhesive. Then I'll just trim the edges out here, right to the edge there. Alright, now same thing with this. Just take this edge of tape that's sticking out here, lightly kind of fold it down, not all the way along there, just enough to get it down like on the edges. Try not to touch it too much, but it needs to be kind of down there already, sticking against the decal. All right. I'll go in here with my piece. Already kind of rounded off the edge a little bit. I don't know if you could see that, but just to give it a little scale detail. So again, you could do this out of paper if you want. It would have basically the same effect, or like a thicker cardstock at least. But I always save any type of plastic packaging that I come across for stuff like this, because I'm always building stuff. And you can just gently stick it on there and go over the sides. And now it's on there good. And so I already had this other one put on. But you can see it creates a nice looking rail, and that's not going anywhere, you know. And you'll be able to, it's important to be sure to wrap it over the edges over, because you're gonna always be touching this rail right here, and you wouldn't want the aluminum tape peeling up from this edge right here. So be sure to wrap it under that L that you create. But as you can see, it creates a really kick-ass looking, wow, that really came out. This is the first time out of the gate that I've ever used the chrome. On my AC/DC, I painted this stuff red, so I'm real happy with the way that looks. Next, now that that's on, I can glue on the head. The reason why I left the head off was obviously so I wouldn't have to wrestle trying to fit the rail underneath that small area when I was trying to get the rails on. So there's a number of steps that kind of have to be done in order. But now that that's on, I can go ahead and rough up the bottom of that a little bit, put a little thin layer of epoxy on there, and get that head permanently glued on. And I'll be back with that in just a bit. Okay, so I've got the head on there now, glued in there, and there's a support screw underneath. I've got the back panel on. I'm gonna just go over really quick how to make a bezel. Bezel isn't really all that necessary. I mean, it's kind of an optional thing. You could just leave the phone in there as is, and I guess have it look okay. But the bezel is just kind of something that's gonna hide the phone. You won't even be able to tell it's a phone. And the way I made that was I just took some more of a plastic packaging, cut out a piece of it. Again, using the method of just holding one side up to the edge and then creating little X-Acto marks on a larger piece to come up with the dimension. That way you can have a piece that fits in there exactly. And then what I did was, while it's in there still in the clear stage, what I'm going to do is this packaging had some ink on it, but I'll just take a little rubbing alcohol to that on the inside. It'll come right off. Because once I get my marks and the inner dimension of this cut out, I'm going to paint the back side of this black. I'm going to tape the front side off, paint the back side of it black like we did with the back panel, and then it'll basically be a nice black bezel, but it'll have a nice glossy surface. You could do a sticker with it. I tried doing a sticker, but it just ends up looking like a sticker. This ends up looking like a piece of glass. We're going to cut a hole out of the center of this, so once you have it to size, you basically stick it in there, and I put the phone in and I turn the phone on, and you can see with the phone on you have an exact outer dimension of the screen. So I hold it in there and I make little tiny marks on the plastic on the edges of the corners of the screen, going about 1 millimeter over on each side, all the way on each corner. That way you're sure that your bezel is going to be straight and you have your cutout marks. Also, I do a little light tracing with the X-Acto, cutout mark for this circle. Kind of not as big as the circle, but on the inner dimension. because when the lockdown bar is on there, you're going to need access to the button there. And so this bezel, once it's done and painted, it's going to double stick on. And when I come back, that'll be done. It'll be time to charge into the electrics, and then just mounting the legs on, and then the project will be done. Okay, it's time to charge into real quickly doing the lighting for this thing. If you've been following the video, I was originally planning on trying to do the lighting off the little rechargeable battery there. I canned that idea just because when testing it, wasn't lasting. It's lasting maybe an hour, and then the Bluetooth was starting to, like, you'd be in the middle of the game and the Bluetooth would stop working because the lights were sucking too much power out of the battery. So it's just too small of a battery that I was trying to run all the lighting from. So I decided to run, as I'd kind of planned out before, a little 9-volt battery, a rechargeable 9-volt. So you can see I've got this little rechargeable 9-volt Velcro to the bottom of the phone. So whenever I want to recharge it, I can easily just pull the phone up, unplug it from the little 9-volt receptacle here, throw another one. I have a bunch of these little 9-volt rechargeables, and then just easily put it back on there. What I'm going to go ahead, and I've got the bezel on there now, you can see. What I'm going to go ahead and do, though, is real quickly explain the wiring for this. So here's my 2 switches that I installed earlier, okay? This right switch is going to be for multicolor. This left one is just going to be for static white lighting, okay? So here's my little bracket that I made earlier for the wire bracket, and you can see I just hot glued 2 lights of that thing. This one on the right is the multicolor, and the one on the left is just a white static light. If you look real closely, what I've done with the lights is I've run sandpaper over the tops and the fronts of them and the sides of them. What that does is diffuses the light, because when you get these things, there's like a lens on them, and what that does is it focuses the light like a flashlight, and what the sandpaper does is it helps to diffuse the light and kind of spread it out. So I'm going to take these 2 lights and then just put this little ditty back in the hole that we had here for the mount, and you can see that they're in there. Now they're practically going to be really close to the damn back glass. I mean, I may have to mess around with that, but I'm going to at least show you how the wiring goes, okay? So from that 9-volt lead, I have coming up a positive and a negative, okay? So, and then also, since I was running a 9-volt, I added another little multicolor down here, LED, just to add ambient lighting to the bottom. It'll throw down lighting on the bottom, since I've got the higher voltage battery. So, I don't know, it's hard to see this, but I have my main positive and negative here. So what's going to happen here is everything black goes to the black lead. Okay, so all my black wires from the LEDs, from both LEDs, go to that black lead. Okay, these 2 bottom leads from the panel, this bottom lead and this bottom lead, these both go to the positive lead. Okay, and then the positives, the red wires from both lights, those will attach, the multicolor red will attach to this red lead here, and then the static red will attach to this lead here. That way you'll be able to switch it on and off. It's about as easy as I can explain it. I'm just going to go ahead and wire these up real quick and show you how it works. So basically, all the negatives, all the black wires go to your negative lead. The red wires go to these 2 positives coming off of the switches, okay? And I'll be right back when I have that wired up and we'll test it. Okay, so here's all my wiring hooked together. It looks like a big spaghetti mess, but basically all the black leads are all twisted together. There's one lead, all the red leads, the bottom part of the red leads are twisted to the main red power down here, where my finger is holding. There's one positive lead coming off this switch going to the static white. One positive lead coming off going to the static multicolor, then one positive going to the multicolor below. I know that sounds confusing, but if you just get some switches and some LEDs and start messing with them with batteries, you'll see how circuits work really easy. They're easy to put together. That's as best as I could really explain it. I'm gonna just go ahead and test these. We're gonna test the static. There's our main white LED going, and so that works. And we're testing the color change one. That looks like it's working fine. Okay, so now that that's working, I can go ahead and just flux some solder on these connections, insulate everything, and I'll be good to close it up. Before I do that, I'm going to go over this real quick. I made a little reflector out of just some cardstock covered with that I bent, kind of like a little reflector. And then I used our reflective aluminum tape. That way I'm going to work it. I'm going to basically work it in here. There's a hole in the middle to let the light shine through. And I'm going to work it in there, as you can see, to kind of, I may have to cut it down a little bit and work with it a little bit, but I'm going to try to work it in there so the lights will have this metallic reflector to shine off of. Theoretically, that should work to disperse a lot more light, since it's just one bulb that's going, and that should theoretically light up the whole marquee with just that one light. I'll be back when I have all this soldered up and basically put back together, and we'll get into putting the legs on next. Okay, so I have the lighting circuit all done. I have the back panel reinstalled there now. I have the front glass. I have the graphic sandwiched in between the two panels of glass. So the inner panel of glass, you can see I cut the graphic down just a little bit so it sits within the edges a little bit. That should work with the reflector to throw some light out the edges, kind of like the real machine does. The real machine has like a little light show going around the edges, and we're going to try to simulate that. So I'm going to turn off the light real quick and demonstrate, show you how that looks. So here's our static, and this is just one LED in there. So, but it's now running off a 9-volt that's underneath a rechargeable 9-volt that's underneath the phone. So you can see the bezel and everything makes the phone look real nice. It just looks like a big one solid piece of glass almost. So that's kind of why I take the phone as far up to the edge as I can, and then do the bezel and everything. It ends up looking really clean. Here is an example of the multicolor, which is really cool. And remembering this is just one LED in there that's powering these things. But with the 9-volt, it's plenty bright. And that color change LED really looks cool. It's kind of hard for my phone to capture it, but it really looks awesome. It's throwing a lot of light out of there. And then of course I have my little ambient light. It's like a red and blue flasher, so when the legs are on, it'll stand up about that high and throw light out the bottom. So I'm really happy with the way the lighting came out on this thing. It's time to put the legs on, and then the project will be done. Okay, this is it. If you followed the video series at all, we're at the finish line now. going to take my legs and install them onto the machine. It's going to be quick and easy. Basically, I've taken these legs, obviously fabricated them out. I've drilled holes in them. As you can see, I've countersunk holes. I've fine sanded the finish on the outside. The inside has 1/4 inch wooden spacers now. They're about the size of a matchstick. You could actually use matchsticks if you wanted. On the inside here, what I've done is I've pre-applied some 3M double stick foam tape. That stuff is like super strong. It's the stuff that's used to hold car emblems onto cars and all sorts of stuff. It's very strong stuff. So I've applied a little strip on each side and then cut it with the X-Acto to fit. And basically all I have to do now is just peel the red side off, exposing the sticker, and then basically press them up to the sides of the cabinet and then drill little micro holes in there so I get my little brass screws in there. What I'm going to do before I do that is I'm going to run a little X-Acto along the edge there, and then along the edge of the decal there, and then cut that away so the sticker material is sticking to actual cabinet side itself, both on the front and on the side, instead of sticking to decal that's sticking to cabinet. That way it'll be sticking to the actual cabinet. And then once I get the screws in there, they'll back everything up. You can see I've staggered the screw holes so they don't run into each other. But I'm going to go ahead and install those, and I'll be right back with the finished product. So, after carefully putting all the legs on, screwing them in, once I would stick them on, I would drill little micro pilot holes for these screws with like a 1/32 drill bit, just about the tiniest drill bit, making sure it was smaller than the diameter of the screw. But there's the legs on there, and they look really good, just solid. One thing I did afterwards is I go in and I drip a little drip of epoxy on the bottom of each wood piece, and what that does is it acts like little pads, so you'll be safe to put it down on any surface without the metal legs scratching whatever furniture or whatever. But there it is, finished product. So whoever took the time to watch the video, thanks. It was a fun little project, and with just a few tools, you could even potentially pull this whole project off with just a Dremel and like a hacksaw and a miter box. Using your Dremel to cut out the sides kind of outside the lines, and then you could sand back in. They even make an attachment for the Dremel that's like let's see if I can find it. Yeah, they even make one of these for the Dremel, which is it just screws right onto your Dremel, and it's a little tiny jigsaw. This would actually be perfect. Or there's a number of Dremel circular blades that they make. But anyway, there it is, done. So you could potentially do the project with just like hand tools, and you wouldn't necessarily need a scroll saw. But very happy to have this done now, and it's time to play a little Xenon now.